Hello and welcome to Fast Not Good, where we make videos fast and not good. This is the last video in our death series. Let's talk about immortality in Severance. Before we get into these philosophical and theoretical brambles, I'm delighted to say that our first video on Gemma and grief was, in part, barking up a lamppost. Initially, we'd suggested that there may be nothing of Gemma still in the Miss Casey body. But this hellscape of different innies, each subjected to a specific experience on repeat for however long the rooms have been active, with Gemma still herself outside the rooms. Oh, this is so much worse, and better, and connected with MDR's contributions in a much different way than predicted. And the Severance chips definitely have greater capabilities than the PR line around work-life balance. How many are we at? Have we seen 4 different innies cohabiting Gemma's body so far? Horrifying. Fair play, showrunners.
Nice.
Here, now, between episode 7 and episode 8, I'm seeing an abundance of fans theorising that Gemma's testing will culminate in some sort of resurrection of Kier. As always, we don't want to yuck anyone's yum on this channel, but that narrative doesn't feel very aligned with the themes or tone of the show. I would be deeply disappointed if the answer to
Who are you?
the threading question of the whole series is just,
You're Kier now.
There are dialogues around different kinds of immortality though, and we're going to get into those.
Section the first.
Immortality as lineage. From an evolutionary perspective, the ongoing Eagan family line is a form of immortality. Assuming that the histories we're shown are accurate, and assuming that the Perpetuity wing is correct in its timeline of past Lumon CEOs, and assuming that they are all genetically descended from Kier, there's a sort of immortality in the proliferation of Kier's genes through his children and family line. The family survives, and keeps an active memory of Kier alive. This active memory extends beyond Kier's direct biological descendants into groups of devout, or at least devotion-signifying, peers. But the Eagans themselves are elevated by the grand array of accomplishments tied to their family name. There's brand recognition. Eagans are industrious, influential, powerful, and enduring. These connotations with the Eagan brand grow over time, and through different branches of influence. From Lumon's origins in topical salves, through Myrtle's school, the Myrtle Eagan Credit Union, Lumon's tens of charter schools, the township of Kier, Pip's, presumed Philip Egan's, diner, James' chief executive oversight of the development and implementation of the Severance chip, which is not exclusive to Lumon. We're told that other companies are using the technology. And James' chief executive oversight bringing clean water to villages in Lesotho with a process called Kier. Clear. Kier's name is tied to many of these Eagan-headed side quests. Pip's Diner might be an outlier, but harmless sub-theory that their brunch menu is Kier-themed. Benevolence bagels. Probity porridge.
What's the special today? Nimble granola goji bowl.
Delicious. Myrtle's school, and the Eagan charter schools, are likely to be teaching Kier's ideologies. There's a long history of faith schools. Catholic and Christian schools go way back. But more recent churches, like the Church of Latter-day Saints and Scientology, also have input into affiliated schools and their curricula. These schools can be more or less forthcoming with their faith-based positions. For example, Clearwater School in Florida is affiliated with Applied Scholastics, which is the learning model that L. Ron Hubbard created. The school claims to be inclusive and accepting of all backgrounds, but ex-students reported experiences of Scientological attitudes in teaching methods and peer relationships. Like, students from non-Scientology backgrounds were othered and excluded from group events like L. Ron Hubbard's birthday celebrations, and that peer exclusion can have a heck of an effect on a kid's social confidence. If the Myrtle Eagan School and other Eagan-affiliated educational institutions follow the examples of LDS and Scientology, then folks like Harmony Cobell would have been steeped in Kier's scriptures from an early age. If the school is residential, as it's presumed to be, then some amount of pastoral support would be typical, like school staff would function as surrogate parents whilst the kids were in their care. All of Kier's chat about children might then be internalised by some students at these schools, leading to a much bigger pool of Kier-venerating descendants than just the biological line. Kier's children are also Lumon's workforce. The
children of my industry.
This language constructs a sense of closeness with Kier. He's everyone's wise and noble grandfather. And whether employees internalise this closeness or not, there's still an expectation to praise grandfather. Like, be expressive in the appropriate vernacular, participate in the correct company codes. As long as these codes are active, Kier the memory will live on. The intergenerational association of Eagan's with Lumon, alongside the company's evident success, combined with the frequent references to Kier the grandfather, suggests an image of Kier through the years since his death. Kier is dead, but his genetic descendants and the non-hereditary Eagan family survive, and they preserve both his industrial legacy and an image of him.
Section the second.
Immortality as Remembrance. Focusing back within Lumon, Kier is flippin' everywhere. Iconography is abundant, from the giant engraving in the central concourse to the hagiographic portraits and sculpted busts. Scripture attributed to Kier is quoted generously, on and off the severed floor. Praise Kier. Thank Kier. Let Kier guide your hand. Kier is entangled in the vocabulary. His name is invoked as a deity's name. In times of hardship, gratitude, indecision, the omnipresence of Kier makes him, in an abstracted way, immortal. But this gets into a point about distortion of memory over time. The memory of Kier is not so much the memory of the man, but the propagation of the myth. I wish we had more excerpts from the handbooks.
Come on, Dan. Give us the deep lore.
But the material shared in the show has a tone somewhere between a CEO's autobiography and a first-person hagiography. Harmless subtheory, there were ghostwriters involved in the handbooks. I've been thinking a bunch about the history of Lumon's PR, like pre-Natalie, and wondering about, for example, Imogene's role in the early days. She was employed at the Ether Factory. I wonder whether she might have contributed to the handbook's early drafts. Or anyone else, like there might be other imaginary people in the expanded imaginary lore. My point is that more people than Kier were surely involved in creating the foundations for expansion, setting up the Lumon that we see. More people than Kier were necessary to create and practice the company language, the principles, to latch on to the Tempers model. I wonder at which point in the company's history the switch was made from workplace to surrogate family. If that ethos was embedded from the start, it would make Lumon a bit of a corporate outlier. So, a spot of research suggests that the idea of a corporate family framework emerged in the 1990s. Admittedly, Lumon is different in many ways. Like, the Eagan descendants are mega significant as figureheads for the company, and the Eagan descendants hold significant power in a structure that doesn't apply to the vast majority of family-founded corporations. Most, well, all that we could find, family companies that boomed in the Second Industrial Revolution ended up outsourcing the actual running of the business to specialised managers, with the family members themselves moving towards more of a shareholder position. That is, more interested in income than nitty-gritty management. The Eagans still run Lumon. Then, yeah, the corporate family language got big in the 2010s, in line with corporations trying to connect to millennials, wanting a sense of belonging and a real culture fit from their workplace. Lumon goes hard on this, really digging into the idea of employees and associates as family, Kier's children, the branding of the Eagan family gala. How important is accuracy, though? How important is authenticity? How important is truth? The image symbol of Kier has dwarfed the memories of the person. His life is immortalised as a series of fables, crafted to enable attentive workers to learn meaningful lessons. Kier's immortality is in the legacy of lessons attributed to him, and the saintly image constructed and curated over the years. Lumon's expansion since Kier's death has similarly dwarfed the company's origins. Topical salves. I wonder how those first Lumon salves were marketed. What were they professing to cure? There was no regulation around the marketing of medical products in the first 47 years of Lumon's business practice. It could have been a tub full of cocaine in petroleum jelly, maybe with a brochure about taming the tempers, sold as a cure for rashes, baldness, warts, worms, chafing, perspiration, and ennui. Why were those first salves successful? What were they promising to heal? Regardless, the myth of Kier has grown enormous, and the myth carries a version of the memory. This is how Kier is made immortal. Kier's self-professed main thing was the taming of the Four Tempers model. He made it, said it worked for him, passed it on. The legacy of acts and works can be considered a kind of immortality. Kier's lifetime was alongside a growing anti-church and atheistic social shift, and Kier perhaps sought immortality on this earthly plane through his acts and works, rather than spiritual grace or salvation. Borrowing from a eulogy written for Adolphe Bertillon, a member of the anti-church and atheist Society for Mutual Autopsy in the late 1800s, for him, the only possible survival was that which resulted from acts and from works. Like us, he knew that the only means of not dying entirely was to dispose to the four winds all that one could of the fire of one's heart and the light of one's mind. Possible survival. Not dying entirely. That's immortality adjacent, innit? As always, might be missing or forgetting nuggets from the series, but I can't recall any Kier stuff where he mentions literally wanting to live forever, wanting not to die, or wanting to be restored after death. I don't think undoing death is Kier's
gentle and elegant vision.
He didn't want literal immortality or resurrection.
People have begun to ask what I see as my life's great achievement. They wish to know how they should remember me as I rot.
He wanted the memory to endure, the output, the industry. Not himself as himself, rather himself as founder, himself as model, himself as template. A remembered man does not decay. A remembered man also doesn't have to get resurrected into a world totally alien from his own. A remembered man isn't expected to stand up against the giant myth that's grown around him since his death. A remembered man, in the generations of remembering, gets a bunch of work done and ends up looking better than the only human original ever could. Kier is already immortalised in the most favourable way for Lumon. If we flubbed this one, and Cold Harbour does turn out to be a Kier reincarnation through Gemma room, I will be a bit disappointed in Dan. Tiny bit more on the literal immortality of Kier ideas.
He did. Look, it.
Perpetuity plaque says so. Year of death, 1941.
The others all dead too.
I hope. The board is something else. Please, Dan, let the board be something else. Restoring Kier's consciousness. We're still not there yet. We still don't have the technical capability to store and restore human consciousnesses now. Please see our PT video. For someone who died in 1941, there's no way that his cerebral selfhood could have been captured and preserved for restoration through Gemma. This theory requires a suspension of disbelief that's way beyond anything else in the show. Cryo and reanimation. Kier died in 1941. The concept of cryonic preservation first entered public awareness with Robert Ettinger's publication of The Prospect of Immortality in 1964. The first human to undergo cryonic preservation was James Bedford in 1967, 26 years after Kier's death. From what I understand of this process, you need a fresher corpse for the cryonic thing to work. 26 years post-mortem isn't going to give you a sprightly resurrection. Kier nearly survived long enough to be around for the first sperm cryobanks, but this wasn't pioneered in practice until Dr. Jerome K. Sherman's work with glycerol in 1953. So maybe Kier just froze and labelled some spunk for fun, and Lumon kept it for a few decades, and wow, I hope it's not this. So I don't know what dirty little secret Lumon is keeping, or what all these signifiers to children are pointing towards, but I hope it's not got any direct biological links to Kier. Because frankly, that's taking things a step too far. Besides, resurrection is mega backward-looking, and it doesn't fit with the view of a forward-facing organisation. Kier's focus was on heredity and legacy, on children and the future. He is already immortalised through his acts and works. It's about memory. We see the inverse of this with Irving's execution. The harshest punishment that Lumon can bestow is the promise to eradicate the entire memory of a person's existence. So yeah, I think Kier is already immortal enough, and the Cold Harbour room will be about something else. Please, Dan, and thank you. But if not that, then what? So glad you ask. Section the tangent. What's going on in the Cold Harbour room? First, the other things it's not. It's not body stuff. It won't be that literal. Gemma's pain and hardship through pregnancy difficulties was conveyed so sensitively in episode 7. A room devoted to re-experiencing this particular agony is A, impractical and unimplementable, as the reproductive organs are shared by Gemma and all of her innies, so how could this even work? And B, a more direct demonstration of bodily harm than we've seen from Lumon so far. Psychological damage? Sure, in abundance, but bodily harm doesn't seem like Lumon's style. So it follows that the Cold Harbour room also won't be a literal bodily death. What's the point of subjecting Gemma and all of her innies to the horrifying training in each room for 2 years, only to dirty their hands with murder? I want to believe that Lumon is smoother than that, and has a scheme that won't amount to literal murder if anyone ever found out. What if episode 7 already told us where we're going? What if the cold Harbour room is designed to catalyse Gemma's chikhai bardo?
Ego death.
First thing to note here, the Buddhist use of chikhai bardo is in the death rites, which many readers, including influential figures like Carl Jung, interpreted literally. You know, their death rites for dying and dead people. The association of the term
Ego death
with the chikhai bardo looks, from my evening of research, as always please point me right if I'm straying off, it's a Timothy Leary feature. Tim Leary, of LSD research fame, released his own version of the Tibetan Buddhist bardos in The Psychedelic Experience in 1964 to help explorers on psychedelics achieve self-transcendence through trips. Leary borrowed the Buddhist bardes and equates the beginning of the psychedelic experience with the moment of death. So, for Tim, the chikhai bardo is complete transcendence. Beyond words, beyond space-time, beyond self. There are no visions, no sense of self, no thoughts. There are only pure awareness and ecstatic freedom from all game and biological involvements. Games are behavioural sequences defined by roles, rules, rituals, goals, strategies, values, language, characteristic space-time locations, and characteristic patterns of movement. Any behaviour not having these 9 features is non-game. This includes physiological reflexes, spontaneous play, and transcendent awareness. Then the second psychedelic period is the Choniad bardo, featuring hallucinations, and the third, Sidpa bardo, is the come-down, returning to oneself, hopefully liberated from the constraints of the ego by the experience. Testing floor staff discuss Gemma's eventual visit to the cold Harbour room with an implicit finality. The person who walks in won't be the person who walks out, assuming someone does walk out. The how and why are still mysterious at this point. But yeah, that's Fast Not Good's nice and vague contribution to theory discourse. Section the second continued. Back onto immortality, though, and a crumb more on how immortality is achieved through remembrance. Shall we visit the Perpetuity wing? I think we shall. Let's all hop in the elevator to the 7th floor, huddle in, we'll all fit. Wait, why is the Perpetuity wing on the 7th floor again? Unless there's a second Perpetuity wing somewhere on the upper floors as well, the whole thing is just for the severed employees. It's there for the innies to visit. That's fun! A lot of innie experience is derived from reconstructions. Air conditioning reconstructs wind. Fluorescence reconstructs sunlight. Melon bars and MDEs reconstruct celebratory events. Lumon law and corporate relationships reconstruct community. The Perpetuity wing reconstructs history and, as previously discussed, family. Umberto Eco describes how the fake can become real in Travels in Hyperreality. The reconstruction of Kier's house in the Perpetuity wing reminds me of Eco's analysis of a reconstruction of the Oval Office. Constructing a full-scale model of the Oval Office, using the same materials, the same colours, but with everything obviously more polished, shinier, protected against deterioration, means that for historical information to be absorbed, it has to assume the aspect of a reincarnation. To speak of things that one wants to connote as real, these things must seem real. The completely real becomes identified with the completely fake. Absolute unreality is offered as real presence. The aim of the reconstructed Oval Office is to supply a sign that will then be forgotten as such. The sign aims to be the thing, to abolish the distinction of the reference, the mechanism of replacement. Not the image of the thing, but its plaster cast. Its double, in other words. The Perpetuity wing allows severed employees to experience reality by proxy, through the detailed reincarnation of Kier's home. Though it is a reconstruction, completely fake, it aims to be the thing, and is a successful enough double for devout innies like early season Irving. The double is seen to satiate needs, to the point where the original is no longer required. With all the doubles imagery popping up this season, I'm thinking this might be relevant soon. Applying Eco's analysis again, Lumon's philosophy is not we are giving you the reproduction so that you will want the original, but rather we are giving you the reproduction so you will no longer feel any need for the original. But for the reproduction to be desired, the original has to be idolised, and hence the kitsch function of the inscriptions and the taped voices, which remind you of the greatness of the art of the past. Yeah, sweet. So the living museum vibe of the Perpetuity wing, complete with taped recordings of previous CEOs, functions as a reminder of Eagan greatness. The company rhetoric, where employees are Kier's children, everyone is family, is designed to make employees feel more directly connected to this Eagan greatness. The omnipresence of Kier is almost like a hyper-realised version of Immortality, where the founder's presence is felt to be alive. Even though he is long demised, he continues to guide, watch and teach, whispering on.
Beautiful through the ages.
Cool, thanks, that's that on that. Like and subscribe and comment if you want to. We like making friends on this channel. New vids when we feel like it. The next one will be about cults. Bye.